There is a man in scripture that I want to talk to you about today whose circumstance mirrors your own circumstance. Because there's a man named Gideon that is going up against a battle where he feels outnumbered. He's completely insecure. He lacks courage and confidence because he feels like he does not have what it takes to contend with what's in front of him. And many of you are in your own personal battles. There's a battle in your marriage. There's one in your finances. There's something going on with your parenting right now, or there's a struggle happening on your job, and you feel like you're in the fight for your very life. And don't you know that when we have physical struggles, there is always a spiritual reality that is underneath them?
See, God has a plan for your life. He has a plan for your family. He has a plan for the place you work. He has a plan, and you know what? It includes you. You are someone God is desiring to use in His plan. The all-powerful, all-loving, all-knowing, great God can do anything, and He chooses to use you and me to accomplish His plan and His will. Isn't that amazing? He doesn't have to. He chooses to. See, you think it doesn't make sense for God to use you because you know all your weaknesses and you feel it's impossible to accomplish the task. Listen, God knew your weaknesses before He ever called you. He's not shocked or surprised by your weaknesses. He created you. He knows what you can and can't do. And that's why His answer to Gideon was the same as His answer is to you. The Lord answered, I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites together.
I think about when God first called me to start speaking. It was a fight. It was scary. It was a threat. I wanted to run from it. In fact, my dad called me up to speak one time just to share a testimony when I was a kid, teenager, and I got so nervous, my throat couldn't get words out, and I was on stage and I was so embarrassed that I couldn't say anything. I literally ran off the stage to the bathroom and started crying. And I was like, God, I don't want to speak. I'm so shy. I'm so embarrassed. I'm so weak. This is not my calling. And sure enough, God called me to speak. And the thing that God's called you to do may be uncomfortable, may be inconvenient, may be difficult, but God's called you to fight to see the victory in it. God's not called you to run away from what He's called you to fight through and for, to stand for.
Gideon is afraid. He's got 300 soldiers. They are going up against the Midianite camp. The Midianite army has 135,000 soldiers. The ratio is 450 to 1. Talk about being the underdog. Gideon lacks courage and has complete, overwhelming, paralyzing insecurity. But right before the battle, God sends Gideon down to the enemy camp. He stations him right beside a tent where two men are talking. Gideon hears his name pass the enemy's lips. He hears the enemy say that if Gideon and the 300 come, that they know they are going to be annihilated. Gideon can't believe they even know who he is, much less that they're afraid of him. But once he hears the enemy speak his name and realize that the enemy is so insecure, thinking about Gideon and the 300 coming, a confidence overwhelms him. He is ready to go to battle, knowing that the Lord will give the victory. It's the same way that you and I can leave this place approaching the battles that are in our daily lives. We can have security because now we know what the enemy thinks about us. Now we know that he already knows we have the victory. And so Gideon, confident and secure, is getting ready to go into battle. And in Judges chapter 7, he's getting ready to show us how to win a battle. And it came about when Gideon heard the account of the dream and its interpretation that he bowed in worship. Gideon was once insecure and timid and paralyzed because he had no courage. Gideon now is closer to the battle than he has ever been. The rumors of the battle are what have permeated the verses leading up to this point, but now the battle is imminent. He is more close and more up close and personal with the dilemma than he has ever been before. But we see him making a decision to worship God in advance. He doesn't know how he's going to fight the battle. He doesn't have a strategy for what specifically he's supposed to do. He has no details yet on how he's supposed to instruct the 300 as to how they are to advance in battle. And yet he shows us that if we want to win a battle, we have to begin the battle on our knees. We have to choose to worship in advance before we see how God is going to work out the situation. And so he worshiped in the face of impending danger. He worshiped in the face of adversity. He worshiped even though he was still outnumbered and stretched far beyond his reach. He worshiped before one instruction of strategy for warfare was given. He worshiped because the enemy was already afraid of him before the battle was begun. And so even in your circumstances, my friend, even if you have no idea how in the world God is going to fix the dilemma that you are facing in your life right now, the way you win a battle is to begin that battle on your knees, to make a decision to be the kind of man, to be the kind of woman that worships God in advance. There are some things in your life, my friend, simply because you are a believer in Jesus Christ, that have already been accomplished for you. In your battle right now that you're facing in your life, you are not fighting for victory. You are fighting from victory. You are already victorious. I am already victorious because we are part of the family of God. He has already overcome the world. Satan knows it. You and I need to know it as well. That victory is already ours. You begin the battle on your knees and you face the battle from a stance of victory.
We all like predictability, right? We like to know what's coming. We want to know what's coming so that we can be prepared. But sadly, life's just not always like that. Sometimes things happen that you don't anticipate and that you can't understand. And it's hard to see God's hand at work during those times. And it's hard to understand what's going on. You get confused and you think, God, this just doesn't make sense what I'm going through right now. You ever looked at what God's asking you to do and said, what? Me? You want me to do that? God, are you sure I'm the one you're wanting to use? A nobody? Are you sure you want me to share my faith with my coworkers? I mean, I don't know a whole lot about the Bible. Wouldn't it be better for us to invite Pastor Rod to work and maybe he could preach during the lunch break? That would be better, God. Or God, are you sure you want me to serve on a ministry team? I mean, I used to be a terrible sinner. What would they think? Or God, are you sure you can use me to be a connections class teacher? I'm not very good at speaking in public. See, you say, God, are you sure you can use me? You know you do. You tell God things like this as if he's completely unaware. God calls you to do something and you say, oh God, you got the wrong guy. You got the wrong girl. How can I do what you've called me to do? If you feel that way, you're not alone, because Gideon felt exactly the same way. And not just Gideon. All throughout the Bible, people felt that way. Moses said it didn't make sense for God to use him to deliver Israel from Egypt. He said, who am I that I should go before Pharaoh? Jeremiah was called to be a prophet for God, but he said, sovereign Lord, I do not know how to speak. I am only a child. See, when you say, God, are you sure you can use me? God says, I will be with you. Now, when you notice Gideon's emphasis, he really likes to use the word I in his story. He says, I am the least. How can I deliver Israel? And Moses said the same thing. So did Jeremiah, and so do you. And you're exactly right. On your own, you can't accomplish God's will. But to Moses, God said, certainly I will be with you. To Jeremiah, God said, do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and will rescue you. To Jacob, who was alone in the desert running for his life from his brother, God said, I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. To Joshua, who took over for the legendary leader Moses, God said, be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. Why? For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. To the disciples, Jesus said in Matthew 28, surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. And to you, God says, never will I leave you. Never will I forsake you. Aren't you glad that's the truth? God's promise to Gideon is God's promise to you. Whatever circumstance you find yourself in, God says, I am with you. Don't be discouraged. Don't be depressed. Don't be afraid. Don't worry. I am for you. And it doesn't matter who or what is against you. I'll always be with you and I'm never going to leave you. What a blessed assurance.
Gideon's throwing out all these blames. It's your fault. You did this. And God says, yeah, but I want to be the answer. You're looking at me like I'm the one who caused the problem. God's not your problem. God is not your problem. In fact, Gideon was so blinded by the blame game that he couldn't see God was actually the solution. God wasn't the one who caused the problem. He was the one coming to bring the answer. And if we're going to fight the good fight of faith, we're gonna have to stop blaming everyone and everything and realize God's not my problem. God's the answer to my problem. God's not the one who brought this enemy into my camp. God's the one that's gonna help me drive this enemy out. But you gotta stop playing the blame game. And I wanna tell someone today, you might have walked away from God, but God has not walked away from you. You might have given up on God, but God's not given up on you.